Hi, welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, Ed Smith. Today we're going to take a deep dive into a 12-team dynasty league called the 200 Superflex Dynasty League. So I guess it doesn't take too much imagination to figure out that this is a $200 league in the entry phase. So it has something for me to play for, one of the standard size leagues that I'm playing in these days, and so one that I want to win overall, and really try to can have a chance to make whenever you get into those four figures, it always feels like it's a good win. So a league that I have some focus on. It was a league that we drafted the summer of 2021, so it's been through its first full year. This one drafted just rookies and veterans together, so that's an important distinction. A lot of the leagues that I like to be in, have a rookie draft separately than the vet startup, and I prefer, I think at this point, having them determined by the veteran draft order. So meaning that like a kicker replacement league where you just draft a kicker instead of the rookie pick, so you can kind of have the excitement, if you will, of two drafts, and you're maneuvering around the drafts, and that can all happen. So it allows for you to build the team many different ways. So really enjoy that, and so something to kind of hang your head on. But as we dig into this league, it's pretty standard actually. It's a 1 point PPR, and then tight end 2 point PPR. So pretty standard with the way things things go that way, scoring wise. Not much extra to it. The starters, 11 starters for one quarterback, one super flex, two running back, three receiver, one tight end, and then three regular flex. And for the total of 11 starters times the 12 teams. And then we have 14 bench spots, 4 taxi, and 3 IR. As I look at this team wasn't built to win. It actually was the 11th place team last year, and we'll get a little bit into that startup draft and that vet draft after we look at the team. I feel like in this kind of a format, the quarterback is the most important position, and I try to rate these in the positions that I think make the most sense, the most important to me, and so we usually cover that position first. And so when I look at this team, we have Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, Jared Goff, Sam Darnold, Drew Lock, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Andy Dalton, Mills, and then Franks. And so, a lot of guys here that have the potential to be starters. But if you notice here, Mayfield and Daniel Jones and Goff, I guess Goff, are like really the only starters. And then, we have Darnold and Mills that maybe, there's just a lot of uncertainty. I'm basically holding guys like Rudolph, Dalton to see if they get jobs, and Locke probably. He just feels like he could be a starter at any given time, and so it's keep away over this winter and then over the summer, and so no reason to drop them when we don't know anything about where their landing spots will be, and so we just hold them until we get to training camp and some of those things iron themselves out, and then we'll make a move and make a trade or drop what doesn't make sense at that point based on what we have coming in. Looking at the running back spot, and keep in mind we start two, and then we have three flex. So in an ideal world, we're going to start somewhere around 5 if we can, really crank up the number of quality. And we have James Conner getting a little bit older, and then we have Carter, Michael Carter, and so we like him a lot. Seem to have a lot of him, and he was a late first round pick last year in the rookie draft, and so I feel like I got him a lot of places. And then we have Gus Edwards and Jordan Howard. And I'm going to pause a little bit as we talk about Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard to me feels like he's 26, so we feel like he's like 35. I mean, or at least I do. But what Jordan Howard is to me right now, and the reason that I'm holding him, kind of keenly, is he feels a lot like Mike Davis to me. Mike Davis was a scab, and then he had the time in Carolina where he did well. He gets the starting job in Atlanta, and last year at this time, everybody went into the Mike Davis frenzy, drafted in the 4th round of the startup drafts. They were drafting this guy, and I'm like, what is going on? And they're like, availability is is reliability, and I'm like, but he's not good at football, and so I actually think Jordan Howard is better at football than Mike Davis, but he just doesn't seem to land at the right spots, and he doesn't seem to be well liked by NFL teams, which matters a way more than what I think of him. And so I'm basically holding him with the idea that I think somebody's going to give him a shot, and when they do, it'll be time to move him. But at this point, I'm going to hold him because I think he's well liked enough, and he has had a resurgence, very much like Connor. I'd move Connor as well if we could get some kind of return for him. So if he goes to the right spot, we'll unload him. We'll keep moving and getting younger. And as you'll see later, this team is destined to be young, and we're going to have a lot of control as we go about this league. So as we continue on in the running backs, we have Moss, and he's one of my big failures of last year. I really thought Moss was going to be the running back in Buffalo, and he wasn't. So let's just call it what it is. I still think that he might be the most talented running back currently in Buffalo. So I'm just not sure if I understand what Singletary, Moss, and Breda, what that whole situation is running back wise. So I don't know that I have a good grasp of it, and I'm not sure if they do. I mean, like I'm watching them in their game plans, and I'm not sure that they know what they're doing. And so I'm anxious to even see if that was Brian Dable or if that's the head coach or So there's some changes maybe going there. So I'm not real anxious to get rid of Moss because new offensive coordinator might have a whole new philosophy, and so just kind of looking on that front. And then we have Sermon, Funk, Jarrett Patterson, and Sargent. And you guys are laughing probably as I say Sargent and Patterson and Funk. I feel like I have them on every team. And Sermon, I just like. I like him more than Kyle Shanahan, the coach, probably. But I think he's pretty good at football. And so, I'm torn whether he's Royce Freeman, where the fantasy community and everybody else thinks he's better than he is, or if he's really good and he'll just resurface and when he gets his shot he'll take off. I don't know what that is. I mean, it could be Brandon Ayuk, that was in the doghouse and then went to the penthouse, or it could be, Royce Freeman, like I mentioned before, that he just never really is. And so I'm not sure what he is, but I'm going to keep him until we figure that out. This team actually has some receivers. I'm pretty happy with the receiver room here. Not that we can't get more, but as we start three, we have Waddle, Smith-Schuster, Myers, Beckham, Van Jefferson, Sammy Watkins, Slayton, and Rager. And as we thought, I just remember back to yesterday's video, and as we were doing that and talking about Sammy Watkins, I feel like I have him a couple places. He feels like the Larry Fitzgerald, going to retire, when he's all done, and he's worth more on this team than he is on the market. But he's a fine, performs every week at a low grade. But when we're talking about wide receiver 4 and 5 and 6 on a team, that he's pretty solid in those roles. And I'll be very comfortable with this receiver room. There's not a whole lot of standout after Waddle. I do think Smith-Schuster at 25 is pretty good, and depending on what his landing spot is, I'd move on from Myers and Beckham depending on what they are and what the injury is with Beckham. But really feel good about this receiver room. And then this is a one tight end league, so no emphasis on the tight end here, even though there's a 2-point PPR. It doesn't. I don't feel like we have to go get one. We just need one, and then we need a backup to throw in on the bye week or for injury. And so Irv Smith, the real young guy, returned to the Vikings. And then we have John Bates from the Commanders here, and that's it. I'm going to look ahead at the draft, and then we're going to also look back at where I drafted and what I drafted and how that went. But an important thing here. So we traded away a lot of the quality on this team, even though there's these little pieces, with the idea that we're going to control this draft. And we're going to control the draft in a big way. So of the top 10 picks, I just want you to let this sink in. We have 6 of them. We have 6 first-round picks, but all of them are in the top 10. So yes, we finished in 11th spot. We've got to get up to the 6th spot to get to the playoffs. We've got to move 5 people or jump 5 people. But think about this also. When we have 6 first-round picks, that means we got 5 from other teams. There's 5 teams that can't replenish their roster through the draft. And that's important when you're starting to talk about 29 players plus 3 IR for 32 roster spots taken up. And we control 5 other teams aren't getting any first-round draft capital. So they would have to be that much further ahead of us to just be able to just take a zero in the first round of the draft. So not only are we taking a draft pick, and there's players on there that we can drop, there's not a question about that, but the fact is that we're in a position with the second, the fourth, the fifth, the seventh, the eighth, and the 10th pick. So let that sink in. The second, the fourth, the fifth, the seventh, the eighth, and the 10th pick. So the 1 and 3 is actually owned by the same person, right? So we got somebody drafting 1 and 3, just like sandwiching our 2, right? And then we got somebody else picking in the 6th spot, and then we have somebody else picking in the 9th spot. So 3 guys, 3 other teams get to pick in the top 10 besides us dominating with 6 picks. Now that 1 and 3 guy, he can kind of take a shot. Like he might need quarterbacks, and so even if he takes 2, like I doubt he will, but let's say he takes 2. You know, he's got his 2 darts that he's got to go get with the dart. But beyond that, the next team that gets the pick in the whole draft picks at 6, and he gets 1 shot. And so I'm studying his team. What does he need? And he actually needs quarterbacks. And so I just thought to myself, I am going to make sure 3 quarterbacks are gone for that 6th spot. So he ain't going to get one. So what that's going to do is that's going to force him to move up to 4 or 5 to get one. And I'll kind of broadcast that on the board. And I've started to lay some hints like that so that he has to feel like this pressure that unless he's going to pitch his flag to Sam Howell, which he'd have to reach for, I think, at the 6th spot, then he's going to have to come up. And if he's going to come up, he's going to pay. Like, I want the 6, but then I want next year's 1st and next year's 2nd. I'm going to rebuild. And, yeah, I'll give you the 4th. I'll let you come in behind me there and take that 4th and take a quarterback that I really don't need, as we saw before. I have a lot of low-end guys. I got low-end guys, yeah. But you know what? Who's to say that Daniel Jones isn't as good as any of the quarterbacks this year in the draft? I mean, you know, we'll build some frenzy. I'll let him have the darts from this year, you know, in order to maneuver for next year's pick. So I feel like this is just a control spot. The second round we have pick 14, pick 18, pick 23. So if you think about that, we add 3 more to the top 25. So for a total of 9 out of 25 picks. And then actually, I mistakenly, we have the 25, the 26, the 30, the 31, the 32, I'm sorry, the 34, 35 in the 3rd round, so 6 third rounders too. And so when we start to look at 9 and 6 for 15 of the top 35 picks, on my top 30 list, I would so imagine that we'll have 15 picks. I'll get 15 of those top 30 players that, you know, because there'll be some that fall. People will reach a little bit when we start getting later in the draft, and it's a very good shot. And then we also have pick 38 in the 4th round, and it's a very good shot that 15 or 16 of my top 30 will be on the team after this year. And so even if the draft class isn't good, even if the draft class isn't deep, and I would say it's all good, it's good relatively. I would say it's deep relatively to other classes. You know, is it deep everywhere? No. Is it deep in quarterbacks? Probably not. Is it deep in running backs? Maybe. Is it deep in wide receivers? I think so. Is it deep in tight ends? Not really. But all in all, it's still rookies. It's still as we go through the combine coming up, and you know, this week that we're in, and you know, just that process, if you will, of the combine. I think you'll find that some of these rookies will gain some steam, and we'll be able to maneuver around with all these picks. And 16. The other thing about this is I don't need 16 picks. I'll take them if I get them, but I can also move off of them if I think the value's theirs. But what it does is by having them this year is it forces the teams to kind of give me the asking price, which means that I can start to set the market. And so what the ultimate goal is, right, Jared Goff to be worth a 1st and a 2nd. That would be a good return. Darnold worth a 1st and a 3rd maybe. That's a good return. Mayfield, couple 1sts. Daniel Jones, couple 1sts, couple 2nds. Now Mills, a 1st and a 2nd and a 3rd. You know, that's what we're kind of looking for. We're building trade value of the assets we have, and then, you know, as we go there's not a doubt in my mind that we can't hammer some of those running backs that are pretty good. You know, that's another approach I may have. You know, in the top 5, might get two of those running backs. Well, that changed the whole dynamic of what we have running back wise. If all of a sudden we have Carter and Connor and two more, then we're ready to go. It's like, let's go, and then we come back and get a receiver or two. And it's like, let's go, I mean, so there's a couple ways that can go here, but what we're going to do is we're going to really push the quarterback value meter up, and use our draft position to do that, and we're going to see how it plays out. So this will be a fun team, I think, as we revisit each of these teams after the draft, and it's just kind of how we drafted. I think you'll enjoy where we were today and then where we go. Looking back at the 2021 draft, and I want to kind of bring this up because I think this is a pretty critical piece, and I made some maneuvers in this draft that I was really proud of. It actually got offered the 3-3 for the 3-5 in a startup draft in exchange for they took my 6-8 and I took their 6-10. So, in the 6th round I moved back 2 spots. In the 3rd round they moved back 2 spots, and so in the 3rd round I always move up 2 spots if all I'm going to lose is 2 spots in the 6th round, because I'm basically going to get the same player. But what it did for me was my first 5 picks in this draft were quarterbacks. So I sent a strong message. Oh no, first 6, first 7, first 8. That was that part of that draft. So first 8 picks in this draft were quarterbacks. So I took 8 quarterbacks before we really got started. The only one, and so actually the only one that I've traded is Russell Wilson, and of that group, and so that's probably where some of the first round draft capitals come from. Oh, I guess I also traded Lamar, so there's some more first round draft capital that came from there. But I still feel like the quarterback room looks good, and we're still sitting with Hurts and guys like that, that we're drafting Mayfield, Darnold, Goff, Daniel Jones. It looks like I traded Zach Wilson as well, so I said I didn't trade any, but there we are. The 3 of the first 4 picks I made I actually traded, but in return we got 6 first round picks this year. So we did move on from some quarterbacks, but don't feel like the room is that light really. For how we started. Took some dart throws with the running backs. I followed in with Irv Smith, and then he got hurt, but this was before he got hurt, and took Odell Beckham, and then I started hammering running backs, real hard. I went Zach Moss, Connor, Edwards, and those were in rounds 11, 12, and 13. And so then behind that went Mills and Dalton, and Phil kept hammering the quarterback room for 10. And then, as you see, then later, I just started filling in receivers, Van Jefferson, Myers, Slayton. And then I took Tariq Cohen. He's no longer on the team, but just probably had a roster problem with him. And then, filled in with 4 more quarterbacks, and some of which I just dropped, but, with Trubisky and Mariota, Brissett, and Wolford. And sometimes they trade those kind of guys for stuff. And I guess I always say that if I can trade Wolford for a 2nd and a 3rd, and I pick him in the 23rd round of a rookie draft, there's no other player at that time that is going to bring that kind of return. I mean, I'll tell you some of the other players that went when I was picking Wolford. Darden, Samaje Perine, Eno Benjamin, Jacob Hollister, DJ Dallas. I mean, if you're building your team around running backs, I mean, they could have some value, but the chance of those guys getting to play a whole lot is slim. If Matthew Stafford gets hurt, John Wolford is a starter in a 2-quarterback league right away. Like, somebody's going to use him, especially if I have 10. That's what we got to keep in mind, is that I was pushing the value of those quarterbacks up, and here they're really expensive. Like Lamar was worth 4 first-round picks here. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we're getting back. And so it's light. It's a light quarterback room, running back room. And I followed in behind that with 4 more receivers: Hurd, Fulgham, Colin Johnson, and Daz Newsome. But the reason I say all that is so I drafted 7 receivers in this draft: Van Jefferson, Myers, Slayton, Hurd, Fulgham, Colin Johnson, Newsome, and actually 8 for Beckham. But these are the receivers I have now: Waddle, Smith-Schuster, and then Sammy Watkins and Rager. Now, not that Rager's worth much, but think about the other guys: Waddle, Smith-Schuster, and you're like, well, how did you get them? Well, I trade Lamar for 3 firsts and Waddle. So I was counting Waddle as the first. 3 firsts and Waddle. Yeah, Waddle can come back the other way. Well, now I just got 4 first rounds and I got to pick the first rounder that I wanted. Like, the position I wanted Waddle to be in, so I take Waddle. Smith Schuster, he's 25. I'm going to take him to see what happens. So now I feel like, man, I have got a couple receivers, and he might not be a top 20 receiver, but he's probably a top 40 receiver, 48 receiver. He's a wide receiver 4, at minimum, no matter where he goes, and maybe he could be a top 36. And so if he's a top 36, let's say, now I've got Waddle's receiver 1, I've got a rookie that'll be a receiver 2, I've got Smith Schuster's receiver 3, and I still got some darts with Myers and Beckham, depending on what they are, that I'm actually filling into flex spots with those receivers, and I'm kind of ahead of the curve. And, if again, the goal is to take this team from 11 to 6, we're well on our way. And so, with the draft, I guess it's important to see that I drafted this team a certain way. Now, these guys, they thought that they almost lost their shit, if I can just be blunt. They just lost and they hate me, really, because I've siphoned all these draft picks out of them. But sitting with 6 first-round picks, or 6 now top 10 picks, what it also did was the guys that I traded them to, I decimated their teams on the trades. That I was the second to worst team, so the number 2 was my personal pick. But I got the 4, the 5, the 7. Well, just the 4 and the 5. That's 2 teams that didn't make the playoffs, and then the 7, 8, and 10 didn't make any money in the playoffs. They just traded away their whole future, and they didn't even get any money. So all the people that traded me for their picks didn't make a dollar on this league. And so that's a real big lesson that should be a takeaway, is if you're going to trade your picks, your future, then at least be able to cash it in today. Get some money. You have to get money if you trade away your future. And so that's one of the real goals that I live by. And so, would love to hear your comments in the chat, in the comments section. Definitely subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button if you would. See if we can get this thing to 50 likes. And, look for more content. We're dropping a team each day. And, let me know if you think this team is just terrible, will never win. Also, tell me if you can't stand the build. Take a look at the build and let me know what you think of the build. It's definitely a unique build. And let me know if you think we can dominate the rookie draft, and we'll be excited to bring you the details when we do make that draft selection. And look forward to your comments. And thanks for taking the time out to watch. And thank you for joining the Fantasy Football Clown Show with your host, Ed Smith. See you next time.